colored, what looks like a table up there with jewels on it. That's a jeweled platform, and all that's left of the emperor is his foot on top. But there was a big painting of the Roman emperor and his Caesar. This was the emperor of the east on this side, the emperor of the west on the other side, surrounded by their court officials who are looking up in adoration of their emperor. You can see they love him. And every single face is an individual portrait. The quality of these paintings is fantastic. Obviously, Diocletian brought artists from Rome to do these paintings because they were so special, and the quality is the best in the Roman Empire. And as I said last night, there are no paintings that survive from this period anywhere in the Mediterranean. This is the only place they survive. So we are very, very lucky in Luxor to have this material, even a little sample of it, but also the quality is the best. And so the American Research Center in Chicago has collaborated on the cleaning and consolidation and documentation. And we are working on a book now, a full color book of all the paintings in the historical context and studies of the texts from this period and the history of the temple, and drawings that show the Roman modifications to the temple. So this will be available through, I think, AUC within a year or two. So we'll make sure that you all get copies of this, because it's a wonderful part of the history of Luxor Temple.
Because guess that each portrait of this scene refers to a certain personality during the time.
Probably. I think each of these is a real person. Yeah.
Roman temples, why did they represent you like that? Roman temples?
Well, it's not Roman temples. This is specific to the cult of the Roman emperor. The Roman emperors are the focus of this chamber, and their officials around them are shown worshiping them as gods, essentially. So that's why they're depicted here, because this chamber, this sanctuary, was like a temple to the emperors. This is where they were worshipped. They are the gods here. But what's interesting is, between the paintings of the emperors and the apse, there was a face of Ammon Jupiter Ammon, peering between them from the center, from the sanctuary beyond. So what the emperors are doing is they're associating themselves with Jupiter Ammon here. So it's political and religious, and it's a statement saying that the Roman emperor is the equivalent of Ammon. And Ammon's cult does continue at this time. It's probably for another century or so. So it's extremely important information about, as I said, the history of this temple. And we're not entirely sure exactly when the cult of Ammon came to an end here. Probably, within 50 or 100 years after this time period. So this is a real crossroads of politics and religion, and it's tremendously significant. Now I want to point out here, you see the painting is in terrible condition here, but we're very lucky. In the 19th century we had some people stop by and do drawings of this and paintings that show, and you can see the remnants of it. These are all horses' legs, and the legs of Roman military officials, cavalrymen, bringing the horses in to show the emperor. And this is a special type of scene. It's called an adventus, where the entire Roman army is on parade in front of the emperor. He's reviewing all the elements of the Roman army. This is something you would never find in a church, and you can see that the figures were huge. They were gigantic, much larger than life size, and all these horses, and it's such a shame that it's so destroyed. But we have just enough information to tell us what was there, thank goodness. And one of the early explorers, one of the early, he wasn't really an archaeologist, but one of the people who studied here, Gardner Wilkinson, he said that on one of the chariots that was preserved here was Diocletian's name written in paint. Now we have no photographs, we have no paintings of this, just a verbal description. But this is another reason why these paintings are associated with Emperor Diocletian and probably depicted him and his court. Any questions on this?
في تعقيب يا اخوانا بصوا في 3 و3 فوق شايفين الري في النص والله اثناء الترميم دلوقتي النور مش الاضاءه مش واضحه طلعت على السلم اقسم بالله العظيم مبارك بالظبط هو عنده 30 سنه دلوقتي مش عارف الراجل ده في حاجه كده ما اعرفش يعني بالزواج زميلنا نفس لايك مبارك وزيان
A long time. Well, they've been restored 3 times. When Tutankhamun restored them, the almonds are restored the size of a child, which of course Tutankhamun was a child when he came to the throne. You see the traces in the chest of the almond figure? That's a head and shoulders of the original restoration. Then someone, maybe Horemheb, enlarge the figure, and you can see just underneath the final shoulder there's another cut of another shoulder, and then someone later on enlarged it even further. So there are 3 restoration periods here. But the first restoration is during the time of Tutankhamun, and the almond figure is restored child size, and we find this all over. You can see, if you look carefully, some traces showing very short almonds that have been restored higher. So we think during Tutankhamun's reign, about 1/3 of the restored almonds are restored his size, child size, and then the other 2/3 are restored adult size. Later on, after Tutankhamun's death, they're all more enlarged.
Dr. Johnson, if we look at the carving, we could see Amen receipt, Ibit receipt, and then the name of Amon. Is it usual to write the name of the temple in front of the carving of Amon and then put the titles of Amon?
Well,
like
the
Ibit
text
receipt?
actually reads Amun-Ra, King of the Gods, King of all the gods, who is in Ibit. It's actually Ibit, not Ibit Resit. So it's part of his name. It's part of his title.
But this line is not receipt, Ibit.
No, just
Ibit.
Ibit. Yeah, just Ibit.
last sign of the word Ibit.
Yeah, see, this is just the determinative for Opet, for Ibit. So they don't distinguish between Ibit Resit. The implication is Ibit Resit.
ايه عاوز يقول هنا
بيقول إبت بس
And another thing you might find interesting, because the light is really good right now. You see this? Now, Amenhotep III originally had a completely different crown, which was erased and made into the double crown. He also originally had a ram's horn here. Remember I told you last night that during Opet festival, the king brought Amun of Karnak and Amun of Luxor together, and all of them sort of fused together into a pre-creative state and then blew apart again, recreating creation. Now, Amun, as the result of this, was rejuvenated. He became young again, but so did the king. And for a moment, the king and Amun became one thing. And this shows, this is the ram horn of Amun. Now what's interesting is, this has been erased here. He also has it up there, and it's not been erased. Originally, you can see from the traces, he had a crown like that, but it was a triple atef. We call it a hem-hem crown. And that's associated with Ra, with Amun-Ra, with the king actually taking the role of the sun god. Now, originally, at the culmination of the Opet festival, the king was presented to the population in the great court, or in front of the temple. Now, when Amenhotep III rebuilt the sanctuary, this was the front of the temple. When he added the court and added the colonnade hall, the front of the temple became the front of the colonnade hall. The figures of Tutankhamun at the front of the temple on the columns wear this crown, the triple crown. We think that the king later in time was presented to the population at the front of the temple, not here anymore, so they erased this crown and they gave the king that crown at the front of the temple, the new front of the temple. Ramses II is also wearing the hem crown at the very front of his court. So he's presented to the population in his court wearing this crown, and it was not appropriate that Amenhotep III be shown with this crown here. So maybe Tutankhamun erased it, Tutankhamun's workmen erased it and put this inscription in. The style is very much like Tutankhamun. Maybe Horemheb or someone later on erased it. But it's very interesting. It was erased for a theological reason. But you can see the beautiful curling ram horn here. I really love that. So there are all these, you know, all this information. You see how Amun is in a big hole, because Akhenaten's men, when they hacked Amun out, they hacked him deep. I mean, they really just gouged the god out of the wall. And so Tutankhamun's restorers had to smooth this back and recarve, but the level is much lower than the original level. When you see this, you always can tell, you always know Akhenaten's been here. This is one of the clues. Sometimes the restoration is very nicely done, like here, but it's in a hole. Sometimes they covered the hacking with plaster and that's all fallen away. You'll see images inside the temple where it's just all hacking because the plaster's fallen out.
So this is all the restoration?
This is restoration, yeah, because it's probably from the time of Tutankhamun. And you see it's much lower than the Amenhotep III relief.
And Mr. Johnson, if we talk about the same carving, we see the king Amenhotep and then we see Amenet and Atum. So the relation or a religious role for Atum and Amenet, actually that's her name, Amenet.
Yep.
And then the name of the city or the town. And he is Jed Midu and Etim or Tem, and then the name of the town. Sorry.
Yeah.
The carving of Tem.
Everything, Akhenaten hacked all of these figures and everyone had to be restored. There are a couple of figures of Atum in the back that have not been hacked. It's unusual. You know, Akhenaten sometimes did not hack Hathor, and he sometimes did not hack Atum. We'll see a beautiful Atum in the very back sanctuary. Are you filming me? Your battery's going to run out. I talk for a long time. So this is the Holy of Holies of Luxor Temple. This is where Amun of Luxor Temple resided all the time. And this is where the ancient Egyptians believed that creation happened, but was always happening here. So this sanctuary was a source of tremendous power in the ancient Egyptian Amun-Ra cult. And we're so lucky that it's still standing. I mean, the roof is gone, but that's okay because he was a sun god anyway. But it's a miracle that this survives, because this was one of the holiest spots in all of Egypt.
Mr. Johnson,
yes.
Which manifestation of Amun
Well, it's the ithyphallic form. You see the form here. The Egyptians celebrated creation here at Luxor Temple, and they saw creation in terms of the male act of fertility. Okay, the male act of ejaculation. That's what's shown when Amun is represented in the ithyphallic min form. That's probably the form that this statue took.
So the ithyphallic, the ram, the gentleman, the goose, right?
All aspects of the god Amun, yes.
What is the Kamutef snake? I was reading an article about could be one of the manifestations being found.
Yeah, Kamutef snake, I don't know.
In the Luxor.
You know, there's a separate temple to Amun-Ra Kamutef that's directly in front of Mut Temple and directly across from Hatshepsut's first way station. I don't know if he's not shown as a snake, so I don't know about this. I'm ignorant about this. But Amun-Ra Kamutef came with Amun of Karnak. I left that part out, but he comes with Amun of Karnak during the Opet festival Amun-Ra Kamutep, Amun of Karnak, Amun of Luxor, and the king all joined together. Amun-Ra Kamutep's role is a little mysterious. We don't totally understand the connection, but he's shown in all the reliefs. There are reliefs showing him coming into Luxor Temple in a couple of places. I have pieces of a gigantic one from the Colonnade Hall that shows the same thing, and it's all part of the Opeth festival. So he is an important element in the rejuvenation mysteries that took place here, but we don't totally understand how. But the form of Amun probably worshipped here is this form.
So the statue in the British Museum for Amun,
Yeah.
where did they get from? From here or from Armenia?
I don't know. Now they should say, do they not say? I thought it was Karnak, but I could be wrong.
It's from the Kashet, but this Amun is the Louvre.
Couldn't be the cachette, not in the British Museum. No, there's a big one, big one. Yeah, I'm not sure, but we could check on that. I cannot remember. I think it's from Karnak. So my memory, yes. Hole in it, and some of them have restoration stones inserted. We call them flicksteins or patch stones. This is a part of the temple that was used by Egyptian restorers to practice restoration of missing parts of figures. So it's like a classroom. A master, probably from the time of Ramses III, carved these figures all over the walls, and then they cut holes in certain sections. And the students were told to put in a piece of stone and carve the missing section to restore it. Many of the holes are empty because they took the stones out and put new ones in to practice, but some of them you can still see some of the practice stones are still in place. So this is like an art school. And there's another section on the other side of the court where you can find similar things, but there must have been a court here and probably a house or something where the artists lived and practiced and worked on the restorations of the temple. So this is a very interesting part of Luxor Temple.
Is it just here in this temple?
I haven't seen it anywhere else, frankly. And you won't find this published anywhere because no one has understood it until now. We realized what it was based on the fact that every single figure has a hole in it, and it must be for practicing restoration. So this is all new information.